All right, everybody. All right. UFC 297, Strickland versus Plessis preview, predictions, and breakdown. The fights take place from the Scotiabank Arena in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this Saturday, January 20th. The main event for the middleweight championship between the champion coming off the huge decision victory over the last style bender Israel Adesanya in Sean Tarzan Strickland, taking on Dricus Still Knocks Plessis, who's coming off of a big second round TKO victory over a former middleweight champion in Robert the Reaper Whitaker. Then in the co-main event of the evening, you have a battle for the women's bantamweight championship, the vacant bantamweight championship between the number 2 ranked Raquel Pennington, coming off a decision victory over Caitlin Vieira, taking on the number 3 ranked Mayra Bueno Silva, who's coming off of a second round ninja choke submission over a former bantamweight champion in the Preacher's Daughter Holly Holm, even though it was overturned to a no contest due to a post-fight drug test. But without any further ado, let's get this started and step into the ring. All right, everybody. A lot of fights to break down. A lot of fights to break down on this card. And I mean, honestly, we've been doing pretty well in terms of overall predictions. We did well on the card before our little break at 296. I believe we went 8-3, somewhere around there. This last weekend on the Walker Ankalaev card, we got the main event wrong. That was a risky pick to begin with. I think we all knew that, but Ankalaev went in there and did what he needed to do. It was a close first round, but then that big left hand or right hook, and then a big follow-up on the ground that shattered Walker's nose. But we went 7-4 on that card. Had some big underdogs as well. Had Mario Batista. Had I'll even call the Taylor Lapilus pick a decent pick because that fight was very close. It was competitive. Obviously Basharat did win it. It did go to decision, but I think Lapilus showed up very well in that fight. If you go, let's see. We'll run through that card real quick. I think probably the pick I'm the proudest of is probably going to be Mario Batista over Ricky Simone, because a lot of people were giving me some crap for that one. Jim Miller went in and got that submission. Performance of the night, third round sub. Solid win there for Jim Miller. Again, like I said, Batista, unanimous decision, dominant. Bruno Ferreira, I think a lot of people were on Phil Hawes, and it's the same song and dance every single time. The skill set is on the side of Hawes, but the durability just isn't there. And against a power puncher like Ferreira, I mean, once he hurt him, he couldn't come back. And that's exactly what we said. Once Phil Hawes gets hurt, he has a really hard time flipping that switch and coming back. Waldo Cortez Acosta by decision. I feel like that should have been an easy pick. Obviously we did pick Cortez Acosta, but we had Cortez by knockout. I feel like that was a good pick, and he probably should have got the finish, but he just didn't step on the gas enough. And Arlovsky actually looked pretty good defensively in that fight. Preston Parsons, man, I'm happy with that pick as well. I had him by submission in round 2-3 at like plus 700 and missed it literally by the skin of my teeth because he was about 99.9% there with the sub in the second and the third round. He almost had an arm bar. I mean, it was extended. It looked like it was done. You could see Semmelsberger was grimacing. He got out. Then he got a Kimura in the third round. And I mean, that was about as close as you can get as well. But Semmelsberger just held on. But the wrestling, the takedowns, the top control, even the striking on the feet, Semmelsberger didn't have much success at all in this fight. And I was kind of surprised with how many people I saw on the side of Semi the Jedi. Gaston Bolaños knocked out in round 2. By Marcus McGee. I think we knew what, going into that territory. I did pick Bolaños, so he proved me wrong there. But, man, I mean, McGee is so good. He's such a great fighter, and the fact he was able to knock out a kickboxer like Bolaños, it says a lot about the power and the technique that he possesses on the feet. Gene Silva, Weston Wilson. I did play the over 1.5 at in a couple like small Hail Mary parlays, and I mean, we didn't get close, but we got closer than I think people thought. I mean, it ended at 4 minutes, 12 seconds. of the first round. It should have ended quicker, though. I mean, we knew Weston Wilson was going to get clipped and either subbed or knocked out in that spot. So I don't think that was a bad one. The big apple pie shitter of the night, Tom Nolan over Nicholas Mota, getting knocked out in round one as a almost 4-1 favorite off the Contender Series. First loss as a pro. He was 6-0 coming in. And Nolan should have been able to beat a guy like Mota, but we did say that if he was to give Mota any shot, it was in that boxing range, and it wasn't using his distance and his reach to the best of his ability. I'm going to be honest, when I was watching that fight, I could tell within like 30 seconds that Nolan was going to lose. You know when you're watching a fight and you just have that sense like something's off about him, or the way that a guy closes distance, or the way that a guy sees the shots coming and kind of moves his shoulders, you can tell that he's very comfortable and the other guy isn't. And that's something I saw in this fight with Nolan and Mota. Like, you could tell by the way when in that first exchange, even with them moving around, you could tell that Mota was a little bit more compact and he was a little bit more loose, and that Nolan was kind of trying to land and then just get out of the way. He was a little bit more fidgety. And I think that's what happened in this fight. If Mota, wasn't going to be able to close that distance, we know that Nolan more than likely was going to win that fight. But, he played the game. He played in that boxing range with Mota, which is not what you have to do. You have to play at kickboxing range, or you have to grapple. You can't stand and have a full-on boxing match with a guy like Mota. I know that when Manuel Torres knocked him out, it was technically in the boxing range, clinch range, boxing range, but he was using elbows, he was using kicks, he was using knees, and that elbow is what closed the distance quicker than the punch, and it landed. If Manuel Torres and Nicholas Mota both threw big bombs at each other at the same time, there's no reason why Mota couldn't have been the one that landed first and could have knocked out Torres. But anyway, I mean, obviously Tom Nolan killed a lot of people's parlays. He killed me out of like probably $2,500, $3,000 in winnings on a bunch of parlays. I mean, I had Mario Batista, Jim Miller by KO sub, Preston Parsons on the money line, Mario Batista by sub or decision, over 2.5 for Basharat and Taylor Lapalus. I mean, there was a lot of good plays I had on this card, and I think I had under 3.5 for Walker and Ankalaev. And then we had Joshua Van by KO or submission. I ended up betting round 2, round 3 sub for Joshua Van at like plus, I think it was plus 1,300, 1,400, somewhere around there, 14-1. He got the KO in round 2, and always hindsight's 2020. Thinking back on it, I probably should have put a little bit on round 2, round 3 KO for Van. But dude, Van was getting pieced up in that first round. He was getting landed on, got taken down, got controlled from the top, and I got a little nervous. I was like, damn, man, Bouness is legit. I mean, his striking looked good. He was out striking, landing on Van, but he blew his wad. Van, takes a little while to download the data and figure himself out, and he comes back in that second round and just puts that pace on Bouness, starts ripping those body shots, ripping the shots up top, drops them, and then lands some more ground and pound on the ground to knock him out, but landed some knees in the clinch, landed like 2 back-to-back knees that hurt Bouness bad. And yeah, man, Van is a beast. Van is a person to be reckoned with. He's a force to be reckoned with in this 125-pound division, and I said that before this fight, and I picked him to beat Zumagulov. I think I picked him by TKO. He won by decision. But Joshua Van is a beast, man, and he's a guy that everybody has to keep a lookout for. But yeah, let's get into the fight card we came here to break down, which is UFC 297. All right, but like we said, let's kick it off with UFC 297, Strickland versus Du Plessis, breaking down all the fights for you here today on the podcast. But we're going to kick it off on the early prelims with a battle in the flyweight division between Malcom Gordon and Jimmy the Brick Flick. 14-7 for Gordon, 16-7 for Jimmy Flick. I'm going to be honest, I didn't watch tape on the first 2 fights of the night. The first two fights I didn't watch tape on, but I know these guys pretty well, so I feel like we can give a solid breakdown. I think the more well-rounded fighter in this fight, 110%, is Malcom Gordon. Gordon is coming in as the favorite, I believe. He's like minus 130. It's pretty much a pick 'em. but it's more on the side of Gordon. But Gordon went, almost all 3 rounds with Muhammad Mokaev. And that is not an easy thing to do. And he even got into positions where he got in the top position against Mokaev, landed some decent strikes, kind of out-scrambled him at a certain point, and showed that this guy is really good. He just isn't really well known by the MMA masses. Jimmy Flick is pretty much submission or bust at this point in his career. He went up against Alessandro Costa. I had Costa in that fight by KO. I think it's pretty obvious that Flick doesn't like to get hit. If he can push forward, land some decent shots, get the takedown, get top control, and submit you, then it's great. If he can, pull guard and jump into a flying armbar or a flying triangle like he did against Cody Durden, then yeah, that's amazing. Durden's been submitted a few times in his career. Just got submitted by Tagir Ulanbekov via that rear naked choke, I believe, in round 3. But looking at this fight, I see Gordon as the much, much better striker on the feet. He's going to be much more comfortable if the takedowns and wrestling can cancel each other out. This is a Malcom Gordon fight all day. I think Gordon can use his jab. He can use his kicks. He can put his combinations together, and he's way more comfortable if it does get into exchanges. Jimmy Flick isn't going to be a guy who wants to sit there and get into exchanges. If he starts to get hit and starts to get hurt, he's going to back up and he's going to start to panic wrestle. And I think if we get those panic takedowns and panic shots, there is a scenario where Malcom Gordon, I think, can hurt Flick on the feet and potentially grab his neck in a guillotine and submit Jimmy Flick. Now, am I going to pick that? No. But I am going to go with Malcom Gordon here. I just feel like he's the more well-rounded fighter. I think that he puts things together better on the feet without a doubt. I think that Flick is the better submission artist and the better, more dangerous fighter if it does hit the mat. But I think the scrambles and the wrestling is more on the side of Malcom Gordon. So I like Gordon in this spot. I'm not going to say run and bet on it because I don't think you should bet on this fight either way. But I am going to side with Malcom Gordon. I'm going to go Malcom Gordon by decision, but I could see a second or third round TKO for Gordon or a submission if, like I said, if he hurts him and jumps on his neck or jumps on his back. I just don't think Flick has it anymore. I don't think Flick is in the game mentally. So give me Malcom Gordon, who had a good showing against Mokaev. All right, up next, Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Priscila Cachoeira in the women's flyweight division. Minus 345 on the side of Jasmine Jasudavicius. I understand it. I just don't think a women fighter should ever be minus 300 or higher unless it's title fight or contender bout. If it's not that, I don't think anybody should put a women's fighter at that high of an odd. But I think Priscila Cachoeira is pretty much just finding that right hand, finding a big left hook, and landing a big shot on the feet and walking down Jasudavicius and trying to knock her out. If she can't land a big shot and knock out Jasmine Jasudavicius, the volume, the technical ability, putting combinations together with the punches, with the kicks, with the knees to the body, with the work inside the clinch, with the takedowns of her own, the fact that she can go for submissions as well. I think Jasmine Jasudavicius, if she doesn't get clipped in like the first round, she is going to TKO Priscila Cachoeira and just break her down the stretch. Jasmine Jasudavicius by round 2, round 3 TKO, I mean, I could see it because the volume, the pace, the pressure, the output, it's just unbelievable from Jasudavicius, and you don't get that same level of output from a fighter in Priscila Cachoeira. It says that she lands 4.12 per minute compared to 3.54. But she absorbs 7.13 strikes a minute. So even though it says she lands more per minute, she absorbs more and isn't as good defensively as Jasudavicius. And I think that's more just her trying to close that distance, bum rush, and try to just put the pace on you and finish you off. That's what she's going to want to do. I mean, 58% of Cachoeira's wins come by knockout. She doesn't have any submissions, and she won 42% of her wins by decision. Most of the time, Jasudavicius is going to just outpoint you, outpace you, out-technique you, kind of finesse you on the feet, put together her punches and her kicks, pop, 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 and with a kick, pop, 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 and with a kick, come back with a hook cross. Like, she's going to put those combinations together and just break you down the stretch. And I think Cachoeira is a fighter who can be broken. She's tough. She is durable. But I think the pace and pressure of Jasudavicius is just going to be too much for Cachoeira. Obviously, first round KO, like early on, the power of Cachoeira, the brawling style, it's going to be a problem for Jasudavicius, and she could get clipped early. But I don't see it happening. I think Jasudavicius survives early, starts to slow her down towards the beginning of that second round, put those combinations on, 5, 6, 7 punch combinations, punctuating the punches with the kicks, and then eventually just it gets her out of there. So I'm going to go with Jasmine Jasudavicius to defeat Priscila Cachoeira via a round 3 TKO. I could see a sub as well. I could see it going decision, but I don't think Priscila Cachoeira can last 3 rounds against a fighter with the volume, pace, and cardio of Jasudavicius. So give me Jasmine Jasudavicius via a 3rd round TKO. Up next in the early prelims, you have Sam Patterson taking on Yohan Lainesse. 9-2 on the side of Lainesse, 10-2 on the side, 10-2-1 on the side of Sam Patterson. I'm going to keep this short. I didn't watch tape on this fight. I'm going to be honest. Maybe I'm doing you guys a disservice by not watching tape and breaking it down in this one, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This fight's going to end by KO. Somebody's going to knock somebody out. I think Yohan Lainesse is in trouble if it goes past the midpoint of the second round and into the third. The later the fight goes, I think that would favor a guy like Sam Patterson. But we've seen Patterson get knocked out. We've seen Yohan Lainesse get submitted. We've seen him kind of break and get outpaced, out-cardioed, and just wilt under the pressure as well. I think both of these guys are glass cannons, and both of these guys could finish either one early in this fight. And if it goes long, I would probably favor Patterson. If it goes past the second and into the third, I would favor Patterson. I don't necessarily think it goes that long. I think Patterson's a good striker. He puts his combination together well. Both of these guys have knockout power. I would say the better kicks probably come from Sam Patterson, but the more powerful hands in boxing comes from Yohan Lainesse. I'm going to take Yohan Lainesse because we are going to be in Canada, and I feel like he's going to come in looking for a big win. And I think we're going to see Yohan Lainesse land a big left hook on the chin of Patterson in round 1 during an exchange, drop him and get him out of there. I think it's going to be a first round TKO for Yohan Lainesse over Sam Patterson. But I wouldn't be surprised if Patterson clipped and knocked out Lainesse either. But based on the fact that we're going to be in Canada, I am going to go with Yohan Lainesse to land that big left hook on the chin of Sam Patterson and knock him out in round 1. But betting, I would honestly stay away from it. I know the fight doesn't go the distance is going to be juiced. The under 1.5 is going to be juiced. I would say just stay away from this fight and don't bet it either way. If you have to bet it, I would bet fight ends by KO. I would probably say that would be the best way to attack it, but I guarantee you that price tag is probably going to be really high as well. But give me Yohan Lainesse by first round knockout. All right. Up next, we move to the actual prelims. The first fight up on the prelims in the women's strawweight division between Gillian Robertson taking on Polyana Viana. I'm going to be honest. There is no reason that Gillian Robertson's a favorite in this fight at minus 192. Robertson cannot strike. She's extremely slow on the feet. Her takedown attempts are trash. And she can submit you 100%. On the floor, I give the advantage to Robertson in terms of pure jiu-jitsu. But wrestling, going for submission attempts, being more active off of your back, threatening with multiple different kinds of submissions, the striking, the output, the power, the speed on the feet, all goes to Polyana Viana. Gillian Robertson is submission or bust. Late in the fight, I feel like she probably could slow down Polyana Viana, slow her down, get her tired and kind of just break her down the stretch. I think that's more where people are getting the idea of playing Gillian Robertson here. But Robertson is not the pick here. It's Polyana Viana all day, baby. 12-8, 13-6, similar records. 5'5" for both women, a 4-inch reach advantage in terms of the arms, and a 2.5-inch reach advantage, a 3-inch reach advantage in terms of the legs for Polyana Viana. And if Polyana Viana didn't know how to grapple, if she didn't have wrestling, if she didn't have submissions, I would say that Gillian Robertson is probably the rightful favorite here. But she can grapple. Viana can go for triangles. She goes for high guard. She goes for body triangles. She locks up a triangle, goes for the far side armbar, then switches to the other side, works her way back up to the feet, throws combinations on the feet, has knockout power. We saw her knock out Jinyu Fry. Yeah, she lost her last fight to Jasmine Lucindo via submission, but I mean, Gillian Robertson doesn't have the power to knock out Polyana Viana. She doesn't have the speed and power on the feet to contend with Polyana Viana. This is Polyana Viana all day, every day, and twice on a Sunday. Polyana Viana wins this fight, I believe. Now, it's women's MMA. You never know. Because with women's MMA, it's kind of a coin flip when it comes to lower level women's MMA. But Polyana Viana is better on the feet. She's faster. She's more dangerous. Like I said, puts her combinations together. And even if she gets taken down by Robertson, I don't even think she's going to be able to take down Viana unless Viana jumps guard and tries to fight off her back with triangles and arm bars. I mean, obviously, Robertson is going to be live for a sub here, but I think Polyana Viana runs away with this. I think Polyana Viana can get a TKO here. I think Polyana Viana can even hurt her and then submit Gillian Robertson. Robertson isn't invincible. She's 12-8. The people are giving Gillian Robertson way too much love here. They did the same thing against Tabitha Ricci, and they're doing it again. Polyana Viana wins this fight, and she should be the favorite. I'm going to go Polyana Viana via second round TKO or submission. I'm going to go with the second round finish for Polyana Viana in this spot. I think she runs over Gillian Robertson, and at plus 190 or plus 160, I mean, you're kind of begging me to play it, to be honest. But yeah, give me Polyana Viana second round TKO. All right, up next on the prelims, you have a rematch from Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series between Serhiy Sidey taking on Ramon Tavares. Tavares versus Sidey. It's a tough one to call, and I know what you're going to say. Well, if you watch the first fight on the Contender Series, they got into an exchange. Sidey landed a right hand in the opposite stance of the southpaw and Tavares, dropped him, jumped on him, and the ref stopped it. Now, was he probably going to finish him? Yes. But wasn't an early stoppage? Yeah. I mean, Tavares wasn't out. He got dropped, and then he jumped on him, but he didn't really get the chance to land any more ground and pound in. It could have been a case where maybe Ramon Tavares, survives. Tavares has been chinned before. He's been knocked out. He's been finished early in his fights as well. Serhiy Sidey is a very well-rounded fighter, and the more well-rounded fighter in this spot is Sidey, in my opinion. He uses his length, his reach very well. He uses kicks better than Tavares, in my opinion. He's going to be looking to land that front snap kick, the stabbing teep kick to the body, use his jab, rip shots to the body, and if it goes to the ground, he's got very good grappling. He can go for guillotines, he can go for arm bars, he can go for triangles off of his back. Got a triangle win in his career before getting on the Contender Series. Rips good shots to the body. He's a very well-rounded fighter and the more well-rounded guy than Tavares. But when you look at a fight that already happened and you look at a fight that the guy knocked the other dude out in the first round, is Sidey taking this training camp as serious as Tavares? I think he probably is, but you don't know. When you finish a guy so early, going into that next fight, you're like, yeah, he's probably going to be improved. He's probably going to be better, but I'm still just going to knock him out like I did the last time. Well, some guys have that. And if the other guy comes in and is more calculated, more reserved, and finds his shots better and is more prepared, then the other guy wins most of the time. I think, what are the rematch stats for the UFC? Hold on, UFC rematch stats. I can't find it, but I think most of the time when you do a rematch, the guy who won the first time tends to win a little bit more often. I could be wrong. You can correct me, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sidey knocked out Tavares because Tavares is that kind of fighter. He's like a brawler version of a Conor McGregor. Southpaw, uses that lead hand, left body kick, straight left hand, 1-2 down the middle, jab, jab left hand, right hook left hand. I mean, he's really just trying to find a pathway for the big left hand, and it's clean when he throws it. Does he get into an exchange? Yes. Does he throw his shots wild? Yes. 100%, the guy is there to get hit. But in the second fight on the Contender Series where he defeated Cortavius Romeus, he used a little bit better head movement. Now, I know the fight was quick, but he used a slip, roll, slip and counter, little shoulder roll, slip, slip. And we saw that he was a little bit more defensively responsible. Now, he did get into an exchange, and if Romeus would have landed first, he probably would have knocked out Tavares. But again, Tavares looked a little bit, just a smidge better defensively. He landed a big counter left hand over the jab over the right hand of Cortavius Romeus. Just boom, landed it, dropped him. He got back up. They got into an exchange. He clipped him with a right hook and dropped him, and then clipped him with that straight left right down the middle, sat him down and knocked him out in round 1 as a 2-1 underdog in that spot. I picked Tavares on the second time on the Contender Series because I figured if you're coming back for a second time, there's big improvements that the UFC noticed and they want to give you a shot. I did the same thing with Rodolfo Bellato, who lost the first time on the Contender Series. They were both over 2-1 underdogs, and I backed both of them, and both of them got finish wins. You know, it's just simple math when you look at guys who come back on that Contender Series. Do they always win? No. There's been guys who have come back and lost. But I think that this fight is going to be a lot more competitive, and I think Tavares is a live dog here. Like I said, Sidey's the better fighter overall. If he uses the takedowns, uses the wrestling, he can win. But there was a fight that I watched online yesterday. It was Ramon Tavares versus, I watched the James Dunn fight where I think that was the one I'm thinking of. I think that was it. Yeah. The James Dunn fight from Combat Pro 35. I watched the James Dunn fight, and Tavares looked a lot more measured, calm, and much better at controlling the distance in that fight than what we saw on the Contender. Now, obviously, he came in, went into a brawl, but even on that second Contender Series fight, he looked more measured. He found the pathway for that left hand. He, looked for his shots. He used his head movement, and he found that big shot that knocked out Romeus, who was a big favorite. Almost a 3-1. I think Tavares is wild. I think he leaves himself open to get countered, and I think Sidey, like I said, has the better wrestling. I think he has the better submissions. He has the better jiu-jitsu. He has the better kicking game. But I have a feeling that Tavares is going to pull this off. Something is telling me that Tavares is going to come in and get a big KO in his first fight inside the UFC. Now, he's been clipped. He's a killer be killed guy. He comes in, he gets into brawls, and Sidey is the better fighter, but kind of like what we talked about with Ferreira and Phil Hawes, you don't always have to be the better fighter to win. Sometimes you just got to find the shot before your opponent does. And I think that's what we have here. Now, Sidey could find that right hand right down the middle with that outside foot against the southpaw and drop Tavares before and then knock him out, just like what we saw with the Ankalaev and Johnny Walker fight. The second time out, it was a little more competitive in the first round, and then boom, he landed it, dropped him, and knocked him out. I think this fight goes past round 1. I think a solid fight or a solid pick would be to fight to start round 2. But I'm going to side with the underdog at plus 160, plus 150 in Ramon Tavares to go 1-1 against Serhiy Sidey. I just think he's going to find that left hand, that 1-2 down the middle, the right hook into the left straight. It's either going to be a left straight or a left head kick that catches Serhiy Sidey in the midst of an exchange and knocks him out. I'm going to go with Ramon Tavares to defeat Serhiy Sidey via second round knockout. Would I be surprised if Sidey won? No, but I think Tavares is being a little bit overlooked here, and I think that guy is better than what we've seen on the Contender Series, and I think that left hand right down the middle is going to find the chin of Serhiy Sidey. So Ramon Tavares, second round knockout is going to be my pick. But again, I don't love the fight, but if I was going to bet on it, I would bet on Tavares as the plus 150, plus 160 underdog. Up next in the featherweight division, you got a battle between Charles Jourdain taking on Sean Woodson. This is an interesting fight. It really is. And going into watching the tape, I think that this fight is, I think a lot of people are counting out Sean Woodson in this spot. He's 10-1-1. Charles Jourdain 15-6-1. Sean Woodson is a phenomenal boxer. He uses his jab. He uses a lot of feints. He's very long and tall for the weight class. I mean, 5'9" for Jourdain, 6'2" for Sean Woodson. So like a 6-inch height advantage and a 9-inch reach advantage. 69-inch reach for Jourdain, 78-inch reach for Woodson. I think that this fight, if it stays at boxing range, that Woodson more than likely is going to pick him apart. Even at kicking range, I feel like Woodson can still land that jab because of how big of a reach advantage he has. If the jab of Woodson is working early and often, then I think Woodson's probably going to piece him up with that jab and eventually overwork him for a decision win. Jab, 1-2, 1-1-2, use a 2-3, 2-3 body, 1-2 body shot, 1-3 hook to the body, uppercut left hook, 1-1-2 rip to the body. I mean, he's just going to be putting combinations together and putting volume on Jourdain. Woodson can grapple. Woodson can wrestle. He's tall. He's long. He's lanky. He could grab the neck of Jourdain, who's been submitted in Darce chokes before. But I also think that the more dangerous fighter and the more well-rounded fighter in this matchup is going to be Charles Jourdain. He just got a submission victory over Ricardo Ramos, who is a very, very solid jiu-jitsu artist in his own right. And kept going for that front choke, kept going for that arm in guillotine, and eventually got it. I think Jourdain is the rightful side here. I wouldn't be surprised if Woodson can keep it at his distance and just pick him apart with the jab. And it's very hard for a guy like Jourdain to close off that distance and get into the pocket to land his straight left, his right hook, his head kicks, his body kicks. Jourdain has some of the most beautiful head kicks and body kicks that I think you can see in MMA. I mean, his kicking game is solid. It's powerful. It's brutal. I think Woodson is at the advantage in terms of genetics and in terms of overall like physical abilities and advantages. But I think the more well-rounded fighter, the more dangerous fighter, the fighter who has more ways to win is Charles Jourdain. I think Jourdain is more powerful. Like I said, I think he's faster. I think he has better defense than Woodson, who has kind of that tall man defense because he uses that jab so well. If Woodson can keep Jourdain behind his jab and keep him there for the majority of the fight, then yeah, I think Woodson probably wins and probably wins by decision, just, outpointing him over 15 minutes. But I think Jourdain is going to find a way to crash that pocket. I think those uppercuts to the body, the knees, I think the right hook, the straight left, ripping body shots is going to be good for Jourdain. I think he's going to find his way inside, work on the inside, and crack Sean Woodson on the chin. I don't necessarily want to call a finish in this fight, but I think in his hometown, in Canada, in Canada, I think I'm going to go with Jourdain by a submission. I think he's going to hurt him on the feet, rip to the body, land a big right hook on the inside as he closes off that distance and gets into the pocket, hurts Woodson, and then jumps on his neck for a guillotine and gets a submission. I think he's going to get back-to-back subs. So give me Charles Jourdain via a second-round guillotine choke submission. I think it's just the tall, long, lanky guys. They leave their arms out there, but their neck is usually left out there as well, just like how they keep their chin up in the air when they back up and try to move away. Like I said, Woodson is going to be able to use that jab, and if he can dictate the pace and range with the jab, he's probably going to win by decision. But I think that getting in that close distance, getting in the pocket, getting in that clinch range, in that boxing range, slipping and countering, the power, the danger factor, the submission game, I think that more goes on the side of the favorite in Jourdain. So give me Charles Jourdain via second round guillotine choke submission. Kind of like a club and sub, but I think he subs Woodson here. Up next in the bantamweight division, you have a battle between the Ultimate Fighter winner in Brad Katona, who went back and forth with Cody Gibson in a close fight and then just edged it out at the end of the third round with phenomenal cardio, phenomenal pace, and phenomenal pressure, taking on Garrett Armfield, who's coming back off that win over Toshiomi Kozama, I believe. Toshiomi Kozama. You forgive me if I messed the name up, but he's coming in 9-3 as a pro MMA fighter. In his debut, he fought at the 145-pound division, came in on short notice, fought against David Onama, and had some good scrambles, had some good jiu-jitsu exchanges with Onama, but eventually got caught in that arm triangle choke and submitted. I was watching tape on this fight, and before I went into this fight, I thought Brad Katona was going to win this fight. I did. Before I watched any tape, I was heavily on the side of Katona. But the more I watched tape and the more I thought about it, I think I'm on the side of the underdog in Armfield here. His boxing, his combinations, his power that this guy possesses in the first round can hurt Brad Katona. I know Katona, I don't believe he's ever been finished. I know he's never been finished in the UFC at least. He's got 5 finish wins in his career out of how many overall wins? 15. I mean, 10 of his fights do go to decision, so he's going to have that cardio in the later rounds. And if it goes past the midpoint of the second round into the third round, I think it favors Brad Katona based on cardio, based on output, based on volume. But he fights to a pretty, competitive style with most guys. It's kind of a give or take, you land one, I land one. I come back, land 1 or 2. I'll be there for your counters. Against Cody Gibson, who was the much taller, longer guy, he was there for that counter backhand all night. And with a guy in Armfield who has a 5.5-inch reach advantage in terms of his arm reach and a 2-inch leg reach advantage, with the power and aggressiveness that Armfield has, and he has good takedown defense, good jiu-jitsu, good ability to work his way back up to the feet, I think Katona is in trouble in this one. Now, like I said, midpoint of the second round into the third round, I think that it goes towards Katona with the cardio, with the pace, with the pressure. But I think Armfield has the power advantage. I think he has the finishing upside in this fight. His boxing combinations are crisp. He puts his hands together well. He comes into the fight with a low base, a low stance, lowering his level to stop any potential takedowns, coming back with 2-3-2, 1-3-2, 1-2-3, uppercut hook, 1-6-3, 1-2-3, 6-3, 1-1-2. I mean, he can put his combinations together, and this guy comes out like a bat out of hell. All of his wins in his MMA career, I believe, come by way of finish inside the distance. I mean, this guy is not fighting to go to a decision. He's fighting to put your lights out or choke you out. And I think the aggressiveness, the boxing ability, the power, after what I saw in that fight against Cody Gibson, yes, Katona is a guy who is going to have the cardio advantage in the later rounds. And like I said, if it goes to past the midpoint of the second round into the third round, I would think that either Katona is able to break Armfield and TKO him or sub him in round 3, or win a decision, but just overall overwhelm Armfield in round 3. But I think Armfield's coming in on a full camp. He's coming in with better preparation. He's coming in his natural weight class. And I think he's going to put away Brad Katona. I know Katona's a guy who I don't think has ever been finished. He lost a decision to Merab Dvalishvili, and I don't know who else he lost to, but he lost to Merab, and that guy's just forward pace pressure, and he kind of fights like Brad Katona. So, it's kind of scary that Katona's style is similar to a Merab, but I think the defense of Katona on the feet is not the best. He gets hit, but he uses his jab very well. He uses those inside low kicks. Jab, inside low kick, kind of like a pendulum step, the outside kicks. I don't think he's necessarily going to be able to out-grapple Armfield unless it goes in the second and third. But I'm going to take Garrett Armfield here to get the job done by TKO. I just have a feeling that the power, the boxing, the forward pressure, the grappling that he has in his back pocket, if he has to use it, I think he's going to be able to clip up Brad Katona early and get him out of there. I know 9-3, 15-2, but I like the underdog here in Armfield because I think this is a very close fight. And I think the finishing upside and the higher ability to have the bigger, more fight-affecting moments and the fight finishing moments is coming on the side of Garrett Armfield. So I'm going to take Armfield here to win by a first-round TKO. I'm going to take him to get Katona out of there in round 1. I know Katona's tough. I know Katona's durable. But man, he was getting clipped up bad against Cody Gibson early. He did survive. He did come back. He did always return with punches and come back and, get his points back or get his lick back. But man, I don't know. I like Armfield here. Originally, I was on Katona, but I've changed my stance. Give me Garrett Armfield first round TKO. I like the power. I like the grappling that he has if he needs to resort to it. I like the aggressiveness. I like the combinations, and I like the technical ability of him in terms of putting his strikes together on the feet. So Garrett Armfield, first round TKO. All right. Well, I just recorded the breakdown for the last 2 fights. Well, I guess the first 2 fights on the main card, but apparently the microphone was on mute. So we'll go back and try to attack it again. We'll kick it off on the main card with the battle between Arnold Allen and Movsar Evloev. Allen 19-2 as a pro MMA fighter, number 3rd ranked in the 145-pound division. Evloev undefeated, 17 wins, no defeats, coming in as the number 9 ranked fighter in the weight class. This is going to be the best fight on the card. From a technical perspective, from an overall mixed martial arts game, in terms of high-level MMA, fight IQ, striking, grappling, this is going to be your best fight on the card and probably one of the closest fights on the card from start to finish, depending if there's a finish or if it goes to a decision. I think Evloev's path of least resistance is to use the wrestling, use the takedowns, control from the top position, land ground and pound, and look for submissions. Even if he's not able to get clear takedowns, pushing Allen up against the cage, cutting him off, over-unders, double unders, head on the chin, under the chin, pushing up on it, landing knees, looking for inside and outside trips, trying to take the back and put the hook in for control. I think the grappling is heavily on the side of Movsar Evloev. I mean, if you look at the stats for this fight, Evloev is currently averaging 4.71 takedowns per 15-minute fight compared to 1.12 for Arnold Allen. With a 50% takedown accuracy rate, Allen on the side of his takedown defense has a 76% takedown defense rate. So he has a decent enough takedown defense rate, but he can be taken down. And I think if anybody can exploit that, it's going to be a guy like Evloev. But Evloev doesn't necessarily like to use his wrestling and grappling. He will use it. We've seen him use it in the fights against Hakeem Dawodu and at certain points against Ige, but he likes to stay on the feet and strike. He's got a good jab. He uses good lateral movement, good angle steps, good pivots, good circling. He's always moving, trying to get the outside foot or trying to find the target for the pathway of the rear left hand. His power hand is tricky, it's powerful, and it's very, very clean. Whether it's an overhand left or a straight left off that right hook, straight left, 1-2 down the middle, or right hook, overhand left. That's what Allen's going to be looking to set up. He's also got good high kicks. I would say that the kicking game between Evloev and Allen, I would say the more dangerous kicker is probably Allen. But I think we've seen Evloev use head kicks, body kicks as well. But I feel like the more active kicker and the more dangerous kicker is on the side of Arnold Allen. And when I look at this fight, I think that I like the footwork of Arnold Allen a little bit more than Evloev. If you go back and you watch the Max Holloway fight, one of the first things that I noticed was that whenever Holloway was in orthodox, obviously if you're a southpaw fighter, you want to get that rear or the lead foot to the outside of the lead foot of the opponent to line up the power in the backhand. That is something that Allen was very good at against Holloway, because if Holloway matched the stance of Allen and went southpaw, he would circle to his rear side to open up that rear side angle over the lead hand to land the overhand. But if he was in orthodox, he would circle off to the lead side with the check right hook, the jab, and try to set up the overhand left or the straight left by getting the outside foot. Arnold Allen has very high fight IQ. He's very aware of where he needs to land his shots, where his feet need to be to land his shots, and I think he might be an overall smarter fighter than a guy like Evloev. One thing I will say is that I feel like we've seen Evloev have a little bit more adversity in his career overall and a little bit more chinks in the armor than we've seen from Arnold Allen. And you're going to say, well, how does that make sense? 19-2 versus 17-0. If you go back and you watch the short notice fight against Diego Lopez, now we've seen what Lopez has done to guys like Gavin Tucker, what he just did with that first round KO against Pat Sabatini. Diego Lopez is a phenom in this division, but against Evloev, yes, Evloev won the fight. Yes, he won it clearly with the takedowns, with the wrestling, with the ground and pound, but he got put in bad positions. He got put in a very solid arm bar. He got put in a super tight knee bar and almost submitted. He got clipped on the feet with a big right hand. Like, we've seen him hurt. We've seen him put in compromising positions. Against Hakeem Dawodu, if you go back and watch that fight between Evloev and Dawodu, Dawodu was losing the fight. Evloev landed some big shots and hurt Dawodu, but in that third round, Dawodu was pushing him back. He was landing big shots. He was making him walk backwards, landing big shots, hurting Evloev, and making him kind of fearful. I think if anybody can do that again, it's a guy like Arnold Allen, who I believe is the more technical striker. He's definitely more powerful. He definitely has the higher finishing upside. I think if this fight finishes inside the distance, I don't necessarily see Evloev being able to submit Allen, but I could see maybe he gets him tired, takes his back and chokes him, but I don't think it's going to be a submission. I think if this fight finishes inside the distance, it's because Arnold Allen knocks out or TKOs Movsar Evloev. He's got the higher finishing upside. He has more power. He's also very technical and sharp with the shots that he sets up. Like I said, the Max Holloway fight's a great example. In the Sadiq Youssef fight, landed a big left head kick, landed a big straight left that dropped Sadiq. It was a close fight, but, showed some very, very solid performances in his career. If you go back and you watch the Kelvin Kattar fight, even though it ended due to an injury, Arnold Allen was on his way to winning that fight. I know it ended early, but he was circling. He was using that outside foot positioning. He was cutting angles. He was finding those angles to land the left hand, to land the right hook. And he's very, very high level in terms of fight IQ and setting his shots up and looking for what he's trying to land. I think Evloev is also a very good striker, very good jab, Very good 1-2, good footwork, good pendulum steps, triangle steps, circling, stepping to the outside. He uses very good footwork as well, which is why I think this is going to be a battle of fight IQ. But I feel like the fighter who has the bigger fight-ending moments, or the potential for bigger, more impactful moments, bigger fight-ending moments, is on the side of the underdog in Arnold Allen. I think Allen, being in his hometown, I know he's from England, but he trains at TriStar in Montreal. He's going to be in his hometown. I think that Arnold Allen is going to pull this off. I think we could see him finish Movsar Evloev, because we've seen Evloev get cracked. We've seen when he gets hurt, yes, he can come back from adversity, but he's not a guy that likes to deal with a lot of adversity. We saw Arnold Allen deal with tons of adversity in the fight with Max Holloway and still come back and try to knock him out. From the time the fight started to the time the fight ended, this guy did not stop trying to win. And I think that tenacity, that forward pressure, the power in his punches and his kicks, his overall diversity, and the power he has in the strikes that he lands, I like Allen. If he's not taken down, if he's not pushed against the cage, if he's not blanketed for the majority of the fight and either held up against the fence or taken down, I think Arnold Allen wins this fight. And that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Arnold Allen to defeat Movsar Evloev via a second round TKO. I could see it going to a decision. Probably a safer bet would be Allen moneyline or Allen by decision. But I actually think Allen inside the distance decision, no action, might be a solid play for this fight, because I feel like if it goes to decision, it's probably more of a heavy grappling pace from Evloev, and he's probably able to get some takedowns, control him up against the cage, and just drain the clock. So I feel like inside the distance decision, no action on the underdog of Allen is a good shot, but him being plus 140 is a solid play in its own right. So I'm going to go with Allen. Give me Arnold Allen second round TKO to give Movsar Evloev his first loss inside the UFC, or in his MMA career, not just the UFC. All right, up next in the middleweight division, we have the number 13 ranked Chris Action Man Curtis taking on the Power Bar, the hometown boy, and Marc-Andre Barriault. I think this is an amazing fight. I think that this fight comes down to volume versus power. The bigger power is going to be on the side of the southpaw in Chris Curtis. That straight left hand, that overhand left, that check right hook, the 1-2s down the middle. The bigger fight-ending power, the person who has the ability to shut off the opponent's lights, is the action man in Chris Curtis. And it also helps that he's training alongside the current middleweight champion in Sean Strickland. He has a very similar style to Strickland. Strickland is more parry-based with the shoulder roll Philly shell, but Chris Curtis uses that Philly shell shoulder roll and either rolls with the shots and comes back with the counter left hand, rolls with the shots, comes back with the counter right hook. Very jab, right hook, straight left, cover, come back with the overhand left, cover, come back with the uppercut to the check hook. He's very, very solid in a boxing approach. We don't see him use too many kicks. I think that would be something that elevates his game, would be for him to use more kicks in his approach to mixed martial arts. But, it's not something that he really does, but he's able to find the openings. He was getting outstruck, out-volumed by Joaquin Buckley, caught the kick, boom, landed the straight left hand, dropped him and knocked him out. This is a guy who can get behind on the volume, who can get behind in terms of overall numbers in the fight and still find a way to crack the opponent's chin with a big shot. Knocked out Phil Hawes in his UFC debut, knocked out Brendan Allen, knocked out Joaquin Buckley, went back and forth with Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum won the decision as an underdog. I feel like Chris Curtis should have got the nod there. I feel like he had the bigger fight-altering moments, the bigger, more impactful shots, and I definitely think he won the third round, but according to the judges, he lost the first two. So I think that this fight is coming down to, do you think Barriault can take the damage that Curtis is gonna dish out? If you think he can survive, then Barriault's probably going to win, because he's going to have more volume on the feet. He's going to have the higher forward pressure, and he's going to have the bigger numbers in terms of overall strikes landed and overall significant strikes landed. But if Curtis lands a big one on his chin, he can knock him out. We've seen Barriault get knocked out. We've seen Barriault get finished before. So it's a guy who has undying cardio, forward pressure, and can break fighters. But he uses forward pressure, over-under clinches, double unders, takedowns, pushing up against the cage. And against Chris Curtis, who has a 92% takedown defense rate, one of the highest in the entire UFC, is he going to be able to use that forward pressure to hold a guy like Curtis up against the cage, to change levels and get those takedowns? I don't think he's going to be able to take down Curtis. And even if he shoots takedowns and gets pushed off, I think that's going to offset the forward pressure of Barry Alt. And even if it doesn't, if he's able to stop the takedowns, it's going to allow for Curtis to open up with his overall striking game. And I think the power and technique in the boxing of Chris Curtis is going to be too much. He's going to find that straight left hand. He's going to find that overhand left as Barry Alt walks forward and tries to pressure, and he's going to knock him out. I don't love this fight from a betting perspective, but if I was going to put my money on it, I would put it on the number 13 ranked favorite in Chris Curtis, who I think it says on here minus 166, but I think he's like minus 175 right now. I would back Chris Curtis because I think he, along with the 92% takedown defense rate, he has the power to shut the lights out on Barry Alt. I don't think Barry Alt's going to break a guy like Curtis. I don't think he has the power to finish a guy like Curtis. And if Barry Alt wins, it's more based on going to a decision. I would say probably Chris Curtis inside the distance, decision, no action, is your best play, because if it goes to decision, probably the decision is going to go towards the higher volume striking, higher output fighter in the power bar, Marc-Andre Barry Alt. And we're also in Canada. So in his hometown, you have to think that even if you believe Curtis wins and it's a somewhat close fight, the judges could sway it over to the hometown crowd and give it to Marc-Andre Barry Alt. So I'm going to go Chris Curtis by a second round knockout. I think he does find the chin of Marc-Andre Barry Alt and knock him out. But if you're on the side of Marc-Andre, I would say probably Marc-Andre by decision would be your best bet, because he's going to have the higher volume, he's going to have the higher output, and he's going to have the higher numbers overall in the fight. But I like the action man via second round knockout. All right, up next, you have the featured bout of the evening in the welterweight division between the number 13 ranked Neil Magny and the hometown kid, the up-and-coming Mike Malott, who comes in with a record of 10-1-1. Neil Magny on the other side with a record of 28-12. Obviously, you know that the experience is on the side of the UFC and MMA veteran in Neil Magny. 40 fights in total compared to 12 total pro fights for Mike Malott. And I know you're going to say, well, experience usually wins, blah, blah, blah. Not in this case. Not in this case. I think if it goes decision, Neil Magny wins, but all of Mike Malott's finishes have come inside the distance, and he has almost an equal amount of KOs and submissions. I think he has 6 knockouts and 4 submissions. But this guy is good. He's powerful. He can hang on the ground. He can grapple. He can strike. Everything he throws with big power, and he lands big, heavy bombs on your chin. Mike Malott is not afraid to walk forward, pressure you, and try to put you out from the minute the fight starts to the minute it ends. Magny's a volume guy. Touch with the jab, 1-2s, teep kicks up the middle, volume approach, kind of like a Marc-Andre Barry Alt, but a little bit more methodical. He landing the jab, 1-2s down the middle, front kicks from the lead and the rear leg, and just kind of piecing you up and overall drowning you under the volume and the pressure. He has a big win over Jeff Neal. That's probably the biggest win of his career. But at this point in his career, I feel like Magny's just done. He's over the hill. He's done. And I think this is kind of the sacrificial lamb. He's the sacrificial lamb for the new up-and-coming kid in Mike Malott. And that's what we're getting in this spot. I think Malott's going to walk forward. I think Malott's going to push him back. I think he's going to land some big shots. He's going to take down Neil Magny. He's going to ground and pound him, and he's going to choke him out with a rear naked choke. We've seen Neil Magny get submitted multiple times in his career. He's been submitted by the likes of Rafael Dos Anjos. He got knocked out by Santiago Ponzinibbio. He's been submitted by Shavkat Rakhmonov with a guillotine, but his grappling and his grappling defense and his ability to work his way back up to the feet has gotten better later in his career, but I don't think it's going to work against this young up-and-coming guy who has, I've heard Brandon Oliva say this on the MMA Breakdown and Bets podcast, which shout out to them. I love those guys, but he says that some guys have hate in their heart, and I think that's a good way to describe Mike Malott. He's got hate in his heart. He's going to come forward and he is going to try to destroy Neil Magny from the minute it starts to the minute it ends. And I think that's what we're going to get. I don't think he's going to knock him out. I think he's going to hurt him and drop him, but then I think he's going to jump on him and submit him. We've seen Magny get submitted more than we've seen him get put out with strikes. So give me Mike Malott to win this fight via a first round rear naked choke submission. I think he's going to hurt him. jump on him and either take a guillotine or a rear naked choke and get the tap like we've seen Magny be submitted so many times in his career, before in his career. I would say it'd be a huge upset if Magny beats Mike Malott, but I think this is a showcase for the hometown kid in proper Mike Malott. So give me Mike Malott, first round, rear naked choke. Well, I'll go guillotine. We'll go first round guillotine choke submission for Mike Malott. All right, and now we move to the first of two title bouts for the vacant UFC Women's Bantamweight Championship between the number 2 ranked fighter on a 5-fight win streak in Raquel Pennington, who comes in with a record of 15-9, taking on Mayra Bueno Silva, ranked number 3 in the weight class with a record of 10-2-1, but technically it's 11-2, coming off that ninja choke submission in round 2 of Holly Holm in her last fight, which earned her this title shot. She tested positive for some type of banned substance or supplement, and the fight was overturned. But in my opinion, it's a submission win, which is, basically what Mayra Bueno Silva wants to do. She wants to either take your arm or take your neck. Raquel Pennington, I'm going to be honest, I was heavily underestimating her going into this fight before I watched the tape. Her boxing is clean and crisp. She walks forward, uses that jab. She can double it, triple it, pop, 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 pop. Throw that jab, use the left hook, fire with the right hand, 1-2s down the middle, cross hook. She's a nasty, dirty fighter. Like Raquel Pennington will get down. If you got to get down, she'll get down. Her name's Rocky for a reason. She can come back from the brink of defeat. She can stay in those dirty, nasty, drag-out fights. Mayra Bueno Silva doesn't give a fuck. She's going to walk forward. She's going to come, get in your face, and she's going to try to land knees. She's going to try to land elbows. She has a big right hand, a big left hook. She loves striking off the break. Good low kicks, very solid low kicks, really good footwork using lateral movement in and out, circling left, circling right, 1-2s down the middle. She's not the cleanest in terms of her striking, but she kind of has that zombie approach where she'll walk forward, she'll take your shots, and she'll just try to take it and give one back that'll hurt you, get you to want to tie up. Then she'll start walking you forward, walking you down, walking you down, walking you down, until she eventually just breaks you or finds a way to get you on the ground and submit you. Now, if you look at the overall grappling stats, Raquel Pennington has a 63% takedown defense rate, 68% takedown defense for Mayra Bueno Silva, but a 50% takedown accuracy. The higher activity in terms of shooting takedowns actually comes from the side of Pennington. She likes to go forward, sometimes get the opponent up against the cage, land elbows, land uppercuts, land knees, level change, get the takedown. She is a very well-rounded fighter. I think a lot of people remember her loss to Amanda Nunes where she quit on the stool. And a lot of people think like, oh, she doesn't have it anymore. But I mean, like I said, a 5-fight win streak. She got a front choke submission against Macy Chiasson. I know Chiasson lost to Irene Aldana, but she was about to win that fight if that upkick to the liver didn't land. So, Irene Aldana is a very solid fighter to beat. And Raquel Pennington has a win over Aldana. That, like I said, that submission over Chiasson. Her last fight, she had a decision win over Ketlin Vieira, who, beat Holly Holm via decision as well. So Raquel Pennington is a very, very solid fighter with very solid wins under her belt. She's well-rounded. She has decent cardio. I think the higher cardio, I would say, would probably go to Raquel Pennington. I think she can probably last 5 rounds more than, Mayra Bueno Silva can. But I think the aggressiveness, the forward pressure of both of these girls are going to kind of force it to be a meet in the middle and see who's going to break. And I don't see either of these fighters breaking, but if anybody's going to break, I think it's Raquel Pennington. I do think that Mayra Bueno Silva will be able to break a girl like Raquel Pennington, but I do think the much cleaner and more technical boxer and probably the more powerful striker overall is Raquel Pennington. But Silva can go for submissions from anywhere. She can go for ninja chokes. She can go for guillotine. She can go for arm bars off of her back. She can go for leg locks. She is the more well-rounded girl, in my opinion, in terms of if the fight does hit the mat, if Pennington shoots a bad takedown after she gets hurt with something on the feet, I feel like Mayra Bueno Silva can lock up a submission, whether it's wrapping up her neck, wrapping up the arm, taking the back and getting a rear naked choke. I think Mayra Bueno Silva is higher in terms of the finishing upside. If the fight goes all 5 rounds with no finish, I think the decision probably goes up to the side of Pennington over 5 rounds, because I feel like she can push a higher pace over 5 rounds, but I feel like the finishing upside, like the potential for a finish is higher on the side of Mayra Bueno Silva. Looking at the overall strikes, Pennington lands 4.02 per minute, and Mayra Bueno Silva lands 4.16 significant strikes a minute, with a 54% accuracy on the side of Silva to a 50% accuracy on the side of Pennington. And Mayra Bueno Silva actually gets hit more. Per 15 minutes, she takes around 5 strikes a minute compared to 3.3 for Pennington. And the defense is higher on the side of Pennington as well, with a 62% striking defense to a 57% striking defense for the side of Mayra Bueno Silva. Bueno Silva is going to get hit. The more accurate puncher, the more accurate boxer, the more powerful boxer is going to be Pennington. But I think the overall better fighter, the forward pressure, the takedowns, the submissions, the jiu-jitsu, I think that goes to the side of Mayra Bueno Silva. I think Pennington is more than live in this fight. I could see the fight going towards a pick'em line by the time we get to Saturday night. But honestly, I was very confident going with Mayra Bueno Silva before I watched the tape. And then after watching tape, man, I think this fight's going to be a dogfight. I think this fight's going to be a war. And it's just going to be who can come out on the side of that war as the winner. And honestly, I feel like it's 50-50, but I'm going to go Mayra Bueno Silva. I've backed her multiple times in the past. I'm going to go Silva again. I think, you got to think, she tested positive for a banned substance. Whatever substance that was, I think it came out. I don't think it was anything serious. But if it was something that seriously impacted the success of her performance and her output and her strength, she might get destroyed by Pennington. She might. We don't know what kind of Mayra Bueno Silva we're going to get here. But I think it was just a mix-up in the supplements, and it was nothing that really impacted her overall performance. I think it was a tainted supplement that caused that fight to be overturned. But I'm going to go with Mayra Bueno Silva by submission. I think she is going to eventually break Pennington down the stretch. She's going to land one of those big hooks, uppercuts, push her against the cage, catch her neck, and get a guillotine choke submission. I'm going to go Mayra Bueno Silva via 3rd round guillotine choke to become the new UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion. I would not be mad if you're on this side of Pennington, because like I said, her jab is clean, her boxing's clean, her defense is good. I mean, she doesn't have the best defense when you put combos on her, but like 1 or 2 strike combinations, she has decent defense. She guards pretty good. Her footwork is decent. She's going to, like I said, have the power advantage. But I'm going to go with the younger Mayra Bueno Silva, the fighter with the less mileage on her in terms of her UFC career, to find the neck and get a submission against Raquel Pennington. Give me Mayra Bueno Silva, 3rd round guillotine choke submission, like I said, to become the new UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion. All right, now we get to the main event of the evening for the middleweight championship between Sean Strickland, the champion, coming off that amazing performance in a 5-round clean sweep against Israel Adesanya, taking on the man who should have fought Adesanya at UFC 293 when Strickland stepped in, but he was injured, in Dricus du Plessis, who's coming off that 2nd-round TKO over Robert the Reaper Whittaker back at UFC 285. This is a very interesting fight. It's a very interesting matchup, and there's a lot of intangibles in this fight that I think people are overlooking for each fighter. Number 1, the championship round cardio. It's a 5-round fight. The 4th and 5th round cardio goes to Strickland because he's one guy I've never really seen get tired. And if he can survive the early onslaught, if he can survive the early rounds, I do think that he can put it on Dricus du Plessis in round 4 and round 5 and potentially get him out of there in those championship rounds. Now, Strickland is going to be the better technical striker. He's going to have the cleaner boxing. He uses that Philly shell, like kind of a side-on Philly shell, but narrows his stance and then marches forward, lifting up that lead leg for like a lead teep kick. And then that way, if he misses the teep, he can check oncoming low kicks or just lift his leg to get away from oncoming low kicks. Walking forward, jab, parry with the rear hand, jab, slip off and jab, slip inside and jab, 1-2, jab, jab, 1-2, very straight punches. We've heard it multiple times. Straight punches beat looping punches. And I feel like that's the approach that Strickland is going to take. We rarely ever see him put combinations together. It's mainly just a jab, jab, 1-2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Sometimes he'll go 1, 2, 3, 2, but he'll throw like wide looping hooks. Like he'll jab you and cross you. And then as he knows you're going to circle away, he'll throw the wider punches. He's got very high fight IQ for the way that he fights. But the one thing we don't really see is him employ the grappling, submission game, and jiu-jitsu side of MMA. He's gotten some takedowns in previous fights, like against Uriah Hall is one I can name off the top of my head. But I feel like the wrestling and jiu-jitsu and just overall ground advantage goes to the side of the challenger in Du Plessis. I feel like he is going to have the much bigger advantage with the takedowns, with the top control, with the ability to set up guillotines, rear naked chokes, land ground and pound from the mount, look for submissions. I mean, he's going to be the much better grappler when the fight does hit the mat. I know Strickland has grappling. I know people have raved about how good his grappling is, but he's not a fighter that's going to showcase that inside the octagon. May he have it? Yes. Could he be a better grappler than Du Plessis? I mean, maybe, but we're not going to see him showcase that. Maybe now that he's the champion, he'll switch things up, but I don't think we're going to see Strickland ever look to use the approach of takedown, top control, soften up with ground and pound, look for submissions, land elbows, land hammer fists, look to submit the opponent. That's just not the type of guy that Sean Strickland is. Strickland is a guy who wants to walk forward, get in your face, and jab, 1, 2, 2, 3, and then counter you, eventually breaking you off of that forward pressure while using his awkward parry, pull, shoulder roll, Philly shell defense, and eventually just break you in the championship rounds. Like I said, the 4th and the 5th round is where Strickland's going to have the best opportunity to finish the fight. I think people underestimate the power of Strickland's punches because of the fact that, like what we said, straight punches beat looping punches. When he fought Adesanya tried to counter his jab with the lead hook, the lean back hook, like we saw him catch Robert Whittaker with, where he won the middleweight title. He tried to lean back and counter with the hook, but in between the wide shot, Strickland just snuck in that straight 1-2. If you go back and watch it, he throws that wide hook to try to counter, and that cross comes in and lands. It's the same shot he set up to knock out Paulo Costa with as well. But Strickland is deceivingly powerful, and his power is deceptive because of how straight and clean his punches are. The jab, the 1-2s right down the middle. He has power. He's just not known as a power striker. Now, pure, raw power, finish the fight, knockout ability, that definitely comes from Dricus Du Plessis. But on a volume-based approach and striking, landing more volume and just tiring out the opponent and wilting them and breaking them, that comes on the side of Strickland. Both of these guys are known as kind of an awkward style, but I feel like Du Plessis gets more hate than Strickland. Du Plessis is never known as being a technical fighter or a super sharp fighter, but he has deceptively high fight IQ. And I think that's something that people tend to overlook when they look at still knocks. He has good fight IQ. He knows how to cut opponents off. He knows how to counter with takedowns as the opponent moves forward to offset the pressure. He knows how to grapple. He knows when to use his grappling. He knows what shots to land, the 1-2 switch stance to southpaw with the straight left hand. You know, we see straight punches beat looping punches, and that is true in terms of pure technical striking. But at the same time, the thing that's going to beat a fighter like Strickland with the straight, the jabs, the hooks, the 1-2s down the middle is those wide, looping, explosive, powerful punches. That's what's going to beat a style like that, because you're not going to stand and have a pure boxing match or kickboxing match with Strickland if you're Du Plessis, because you're going to lose that every time. But what you want to do is lull him into a false sense of security and find the openings when he goes to parry that jab and maybe it doesn't come, and you counter with the left hook, come over the top with an overhand right, come back in the switch stance with the overhand left. You want to get him to bite on those feints of the basics so that you can open up the pathways for those wide, powerful, looping, explosive punches. That's how you're going to beat him. I know people say, like, yeah, straight punches beat looping punches, and that is true. But you also have to be awkward, you have to be powerful, and you have to have shots come from places that people don't see in order to be able to land them. Strickland has very solid defense. He spars the most and gets hit the least, but his defense is very awkward. Shoulder roll, parry, catching shots with like up blocks and down blocks and high guards and pulling and parrying. It's very awkward. It's very awkward and it doesn't look right. Du Plessis uses a very high guarded style. hands in front of the face, high guard, walking forward. That is going to allow Sean to set up the jab and set up the check hooks and like use technical boxing to break him down. But if du Plessis is able to time him and come inside one of those shots, he's going to come in with an explosive hook, straight punch, the 1-2 darting into southpaw. The darting straight punches of du Plessis, where he darts in with the 1-2 and then comes over the top with the overhand left. If he can do that to close the distance and then go with those wider shots while staying a little bit, defensively responsible, dart in 1-2, switch southpaw, boom, left hand, then come in with the wide hooks, the shots to the body. He can overwhelm a fighter like Strickland because with the defensive style that he has, if he can avoid that jab and close the pocket and beat him up with big, powerful shots, he can finish a guy like Strickland 100%. And I would even say that overall in the fight, the higher finishing upside is going to come from a fighter in Dricus du Plessis. I think if Strickland wins, if he gets a finish, it'll be in the late rounds, round 4, round 5 in the championship rounds. If it's an early finish, I think that more comes from du Plessis. But like we said, Strickland knocked down Adesanya and almost finished him in the first round of a fight that he was already like a 5-1 underdog in. And you got to think of it like that. Like Strickland is not known for having power, but based on how clean and technical his punches are, it's the shots that you don't see that hurt you. And because there's no windup, that adds to the power that he has in his shots. It's a very hard fight to predict, and honestly, it's a very interesting matchup. I think this is one of the most interesting title fights we've had in a very long time. But when it comes to making a pure prediction, it's very hard. It's like a coin flip, but I'm going to go with the fighter that I feel is more dangerous and the fighter that I feel has more opportunities to get a finish, and that's going to be Dricus du Plessis. I'm going to go with Dricus du Plessis to become the new middleweight champion, and I think he does it by hurting Sean with a shot on the feet, but mainly by using his jiu-jitsu. I think he's going to find a way to get on top and submit Sean Strickland. Now, has Strickland ever been submitted? No. At least not in his UFC career. I don't know if he's ever been submitted in his entire career either, but let's see, actually. Sean Strickland, sure dog. Let's see. He has never been submitted. He's been knocked out twice, gone to decision 3 times. He got knocked out by Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos and Alex Pereira. His other 3 losses have come by decision. So Strickland's never been submitted, but I think if anybody can pull off a submission victory, it would be a guy like du Plessis, because along with the concussive knockout power he has on the feet, he also has the jiu-jitsu and submissions to fall back on. So I'm going to go with the club and sub for Dricus du Plessis. It's probably a TKO, but I think he's going to find the neck at some point after he hurts Strickland and get a rear naked choke, very similar to how he got it against Darren Till. So give me a 3rd round rear naked choke submission after he drops Strickland with a big shot and hurts him. Round 3, rear naked choke submission, and new UFC middleweight champion, Dricus du Plessis. All right, that's going to be it for my UFC 297 preview, predictions, and breakdown. This podcast is available anywhere you get your audio podcast. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Breaker, Stitcher, and many, many more. And it will also be uploaded and edited to my YouTube channel, which is the same name as the podcast, at the Touch 'Em Up Podcast. I'm your host, Double M, and I'm out. Enjoy the fights this weekend.